Recently I've taken to watching Dafran stream in the mornings just because it's usually something that's live when I wake up, and he's doing a series where he's attempting to play every single hero in the game from unranked to top 500. And unranked to Grandmaster type content is not really my thing. I don't really find them very educational. To just watch someone play a hero that they're very good at and just roll through plats and other players in the middle ranks, and then just stop once they get to the point where they might actually have to try. And that's kind of why I found Dafran's content a bit more interesting, because he does go a bit further and he's also playing heroes that he normally does not play. And sometimes it can actually be pretty funny. Him doing unranked to top 500 on Mercy was actually one of the funniest things I've seen in a while. It was very funny to watch him try and not be toxic. But recently he's run into a roadblock on a different character. And I'm not talking about Lifeweaver. He put Lifeweaver on pause twice now. But right now he's been completely hard stuck on Winston. I think it's like the past 3 or 4 days he's been stuck in Grandmaster 5, Grandmaster 4 Purgatory. And he switched over to Kick, so I don't know if I'll be able to keep up with him much more, since I hardly even used Twitch as it is. But I checked the most recent VOD from when I'm recording this, and it still looks like he's in Grandmaster 4, which is very odd because he's been at this for, I think, 35 hours at this point, and he is really struggling. And Winston is a hero that many people would say is one of the strongest picks in the meta right now. So the question is, why is Dafran struggling so much on the Winton? And the answer to that is that he's still just learning the character and struggling with Winston. I think he's kind of reached the point where people know and are used to playing against a Winston, and you can't just brute force it. You really need to know the matchups and what targets you should be diving. And I see a lot of streams where I do not like his dive targets, and he makes mistakes and dives Ana when they're running Ana Brig.
Oh, he has no sleep. Now's my time. Just die! Dude!
So we're talking about Winston today. Everything prior to this clickbait, we're talking about how to play Winston, because he's a very fun character, but one that heavily relies on game knowledge and just how to play them and what targets to dive, and even just how to initiate your dives. So I think the first thing that I want to talk about is Winston's bubble. Bubble is by far Winston's most important ability aside from leap, and it is single-handedly his greatest offensive utility in the entire game. Now you may be thinking, oh, but this is a barrier. Why do you mean it is offensive utility? And while yes, you do use bubble to protect yourself when you dive, but arguably its more important use is to isolate the target that you are diving onto. In Overwatch, almost every form of healing in the entire game is blocked by barriers. Moira's left click is blocked by barriers. Lifeweaver's heals are blocked by barriers, Kiriko's, Ana, Baptiste's, even Inspire, Lucio's heal aura, all of those are blocked by barriers. Even some ultimates are blocked by barriers as well. Sound barrier, if Lucio does not have line of sight to a target, if it's being blocked by a barrier, that target will not get sound barrier. Same for Zenyatta's Transcendence. If line of sight between Zenyatta and the target is blocked by a barrier, they will not be healed. They are very strong offensive tools, and Winston's is one of the best in the game. As far as I remember, there's only 3 forms of healing in Overwatch that can actually go through barriers, and that is Mercy's left click, Zenyatta's Orb of Harmony, and then of course Brigitte's repair packs. And this is the biggest reason why Brigitte is used as a counter to dive, is because of just how good repair packs are, because they're actually able to go through barriers. That is why running an Ana Brig is such a strong team composition right now, is because the Brig can peel for any target that gets dove by the Winston. And Winston dive comps are very good right now. And this has been the biggest thing I've seen Dafran do in a lot of his games, is that the other team will swap to running Ana Brig, because, you know, higher matchmaking games, people will usually run meta compositions, or at least very good team compositions. And then Dafran will just continue to dive the Ana and struggle to confirm a kill on her unless he has the team backing him up. And if a team is running Ana Brig, unless you have dive DPS that are going to go in at the same time as you to actually kill the Ana, Repair Pack basically out-heals all of Winston's damage. So if the Brigade is actually paying attention to the Ana and peeling for her, it's going to be incredibly difficult to ever get a kill on the Ana, especially since the Ana can also throw nade on the floor, and now she gets 50% more healing from the Brig, meaning that even if you are a nanoed Winston, if an Ana nades herself and then gets 3 packs thrown on her by the Brig, she almost will out-heal all of the damage that you are doing. A nanoed Winston will deal 90 damage per second, and not counting the initial burst of 20 health instantly that armor packs give 50 health per second. So with the 50% boost from Ana nade, that becomes 75 health per second. So even a nanoed Winston does not really stand much of a chance trying to kill an Ana that is being full pocketed by a Brig. And it's because of that with the Ana Brig comps, you just want to dive the Brig. The Brig is the weak point of that team composition because the Brig is the only one who cannot be healed through bubbles. If you bubble the Brig, the Ana cannot heal her, and the Brig will actually be able to be killed. Brigitte's own Inspire isn't nearly enough to keep her alive against a Winston diving her. At most, it'll buy her maybe an extra half a second, as Winston's Tesla Coil does 60 damage per second, and Brigitte's Inspire heals herself for 15, meaning even if she has Inspire active, you're still dealing an effective 45 damage per second, meaning especially if you do have dive DPS backing you up, it can be much easier to kill the Brig than it can to be the Ana. And now that the Brig is dead, the Ana is basically free because the Brig can't just spam 3 repair packs onto her and make her effectively immune to Winston damage for the next 6 seconds with a full 3 repair packs stacked on each other. As a brief interjection for how repair packs work in Overwatch, if you throw multiple repair packs onto a target, instead of the healing stacking on top of each other, it will just extend the amount of healing that is received. So each repair pack gives an initial burst of 25 health, it's not 20, I got that wrong, and then 50 health per second for the next 2 seconds. Now if you were to throw 3 repair packs onto someone at the same time, they would not be healed for 150 health per second for 2 seconds. Instead, they would be healed for 50 health per second for 6 seconds. So the repair packs do not stack, as in the healing all happens at the same time. The additional repair packs will just instantly give the initial 25 burst, and then add an extra 2 seconds onto the 50 health per second, if that clarifies how repair packs work. Now, talking more about, in particular, the Ana Brig matchup, whenever you're going to dive onto a Brig, it's very important to try and land exactly on top of her to get the full damage from the leap, because the one troublesome thing about diving a Brig is her armor, because if she has Inspire active, she's healing 15 health per second, and armor reduces the damage she takes by 30%. And because armor reduces damage taken, but does not reduce healing received, a target having armored health technically increases the effectiveness of their healing by 43%. So let's take Inspire as an example. Inspire heals 15 health per second. So if the Brig does have armor, in order to out-damage the healing that is being supplied by Inspire, you would have to be dealing 21.5 damage per second, roughly. So it's important when diving on a Brig to try and land directly on top of her to get off the burst damage and hopefully get through her armor before she's able to activate Inspire and start to heal herself up. Now that we've talked about one of the biggest things that's holding Dafran back, let's talk more about basic Winston tips and techniques. Now, the first thing is how you want to plan your dives and what you want to do with your bubble when you do dive. So as I've said, bubble is most useful at isolating a target and blocking heals for them. Because of this, if you're going to dive, you want to keep in mind where the supports are on the enemy team. Because of this, you mainly do want to be diving a support, so just keep in mind where the other support is. And if possible, whenever you dive onto the support that you're going to be diving onto, you want to land right on top of them, but land a little bit between them and where the other support is located. That way you knock them further away from each other, and then you can drop your bubble, and they're basically completely separated from each other, and they can't provide any healing or support for each other, making it much easier for you to confirm the kill. And this isn't just true for supports, it's true for basically any hero in the game. You can even dive onto tanks and kill them easily as long as you have support from your team, because you just dive behind them, drop bubble, and it's basically as good as Ana's anti-grenade. That tank cannot be healed at all, with the exception of course, repair packs and Mercy and Zenyatta's Orb of Harmony. But if they're running any heavy healing comp like Kiriko, Ana, Bap, heck, even Lifeweaver, that tank is not going to be able to get any heals at all as long as your bubble is up. So it is very easy to dive even tanks and kill them, assuming you have the damage follow-up from your team, just because your bubble does function almost like an anti. This is also the big reason why counter diving works, because enemy Winston dives in order to hold their position they need to be healed up, which is why you usually run an Ana with the Winston, because the Ana has basically infinite range on her healing and can easily keep the Winston alive. But if you counter dive onto the Winston and drop your bubble on top of the enemy Winston, then the enemy Winston can no longer be healed by the Ana, and as such you can burst him down and kill him. Now, to kind of talk about why Winston is so good, a lot of it comes down to the fact that Winston doesn't really have any counters, and you might think that I'm insane for saying that, and I'm sure there are places where you definitely should just switch off of him. There are other better picks, but the thing with Winston is how he plays. Mobility is a premium in a game like Overwatch because it lets you pick what fights you take. It's hard to counter a character that can just leave as soon as you try and fight them, and that's why Winston doesn't really have any counters. Sure, there are heroes that you can't dive effectively. If the other team has enough spam damage and you aren't getting enough support from your own team's damage to apply pressure back, he can be very difficult to play. But even if you're playing against a Reaper, you just don't dive the Reaper. Reaper is slow. Winston can jump across the entire map every 5 seconds. These heroes are not the same. Even against a hero like D.Va, Winston can still be incredibly effective if you just keep in mind the range of the D.Va and where she's playing. Because while D.Va does have mobility, it's not nearly as fast as Winston's is. D.Va has some verticality, but her boosters are just a speed boost and that's it. Winston can basically yeet himself out of any situation he's in on a 5-second cooldown. So while a single hero swap doesn't make it impossible to play Winston, what certainly does is just having no dive targets available to dive on. Because at that point, you can't really do much of anything. If the other team has a D.Va, you can't really try and bubble them off because they have the mobility to get away from it. If they have a Reaper, you can't really dive the Reaper. So that already only leaves 3 targets that you can dive on the enemy team. And then if they're running something like a Kiriko, a Moira, and then something like a Tracer, that's basically 0 dive targets on the enemy team. You're better off just swapping than trying to take one of these fights that either you're not going to win or are just going to be able to get away from you and then get help from the rest of their team. So when playing Winston, you need to keep in mind what heroes the enemy has and what they can do against you, and then plan your dives around it. Always make sure to isolate the target from any supports on the enemy team so that they can't get help while you murder them to death. And remember to just stay mobile, and if the enemy team is running a hero that is very good against you, just try to never take that fight. Keep in mind where the Reaper is, where the D.Va is, and just play safe and poke while you wait for the opportunity to jump onto someone who you can kill, and the D.Va or the Reaper is not there to punish you for going for that dive. Now, to kind of just close this up, I'll talk about a couple of small techniques you can use as Winston that aren't really related to the whole thought process behind planning and executing your dives. The first is jumping after you land from a leap. So especially if you jump directly forwards, you'll have a lot of speed. If you jump the moment that you hit the ground, you can actually keep a little bit of your speed from the jump, and you can use this to get behind someone and then try and place down your bubble and make sure that you are between them and the rest of their team so that they don't try to get away from you towards their team. Since if you jump into someone and you are in front of them and their team is behind them, they're just going to try and back up to their team because that both gets them away from you and also towards safety. But if you put yourself between the dive target and the rest of their team, then they'll kind of be conflicted of, do I run towards the Winston to try and get to my team, even though I'm running towards a Winston that's trying to kill me, or do I run away from the Winston even though it puts me into the enemy team's space that they control? And you can also body block people as well, making it take longer for them to even get back to their team if they decide to just go for escaping to their own team's safety. And the other thing to talk about is bubble dancing, because while I did say that heroes like Reaper can kind of destroy Winston in a 1v1 fight, the reality is that Winston can sometimes win that fight. It's not easy to do, but it's something that's possible because of just how strong his bubble is. Winston's bubble is very unique from other barriers because it is a full sphere. There is a clearly defined inside and outside area of the bubble. If you're inside of it, people outside of the bubble cannot deal damage to you no matter where they are outside of the bubble, and if you are outside of the bubble, then anyone inside of the bubble can't do anything to you. So while you're diving, you want to always be playing in your bubble, or at least on the edge of it. Usually if someone comes to fight you, say a Reaper, they want to get as close to you as possible, and then this is where the bubble dancing comes in. You basically want to AD spam on the edge of your bubble to make your opponent think that you're going to go in or out of it, and then mix this up with, of course, actually going in and out of your bubble. Hence the term bubble dancing. You're just trying to predict what your opponent is going to do, and then make sure that you're always on the other side of the bubble compared to where they are. And if you do this properly, you can kill Reapers because they can't get a single damage off on you. The big danger with Reaper is he deals a lot of damage up close, and of course he has lifesteal, which is incredibly good against Winston's rather low damage per second. But if you are able to bubble dance the Reaper perfectly, he'll never get any damage on you, and because of that you can actually kill him. And this also works for a lot of other characters as well. It's one of the more important things to think about while you're diving as Winston, and it's definitely something that you have to kind of get a feel for and adjust depending on the habits of the opponents that you're playing against. Sometimes people will hard commit to one side if you just kind of jiggle back and forth inside the bubble. Sometimes they'll just chase after you no matter what you do, and you know that you have to keep switching sides. You kind of just have to adjust to the individual habits of whoever you're diving, and then learn and adjust what you do going forwards to have the best results. So yeah, that's it for this video. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe. I kind of just wanted to talk about Winston because he's a very fun character, and a lot of people, I don't think of the finer aspects of Winston and think a lot about their dives and how they're doing it. So hopefully this helps people get better results out of him, and hopefully it lets someone else beat Dafran to top 500 because he's still kind of stuck. So it's going to be interesting to see if he manages to really master Winston, or if he just keeps complaining about every time he does something stupid, and then the stupid thing happens and the Ana doesn't die because he left the brig alive. So yeah, until next time, see ya.